I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Crafting the Cosmos from Office Dog. Crafting the Cosmos is a 2 to 4 player rondel kind of game. There's a little bit of a rondel here. There's a lot more going on. I don't know exactly the right category, but let's just go ahead and show you how to play. You see, in Crafting the Cosmos, you are trying to craft your cosmos. You'll have your individual player board, you'll have the main board and the card trays over here, and then you're basically trying to gather new nebulae, putting them onto your board, fulfilling those nebulae by having the correct stars around them, earning points through those, and then getting points in a variety of other ways. This will make a lot more sense if I just walk you through the things you can do on your turn. But the general idea is you want to get your nebulae out, surround them by the appropriate stars, and complete them. That's a good driving goal before you have to know all the other details. To that end, your turn is divided into 3 phases. You're going to move marbles around the little rondel on this main board. You're going to then gather resources based on where the marbles laid up. And then finally, you're going to take actions on your turn. Those are the 3 phases. Move the marbles, gather resources, take actions. Now, if you are trying to be mindful of time, you can have the next player start to move their own marbles around the rondel as you take actions. I recommend giving everyone a turn or two to get used to the game before you do so, but after that, you can keep the game moving at a little brisker pace by doing that. To that end, what does that mean? Well, you have to move your marbles around the rondel. Specifically, you get up to 3 movements, one of which must be yours. So for example, I can go 1, 2, and then 3 over here. That would be a legal turn as far as moving the marbles around the rondel. Again, up to 3 placements, one of which must be yours, and you skip over full divots over here. So if you have 3 marbles, you simply skip over that as a move. As far as when you're done doing that, you're going to gather resources. Starting with where your marble ended up, you're going to do what's on the left over here. So wherever your marble ended up, you do what's on the left, gathering those things. We'll talk to you more about what all these things are shortly. After that, you go to the right, where you take from the right. In each of the areas you take from the right equal to the total number of marbles there. So again, the left is where your marble ended up, and the right is where anyone's marbles are, your own, the other players, or the neutral players. To that end, over here, you can look right now and you can see I'm going to get 2 of these. So I'm going to gather 2 life form over here. In fact, let's actually go through one step at a time. First, I'll gather 1 star of that specific color and place this onto the board anywhere I want. In this case, I'm actually going to place it down over here. Then I'm going to go ahead and take this over here, which means gathering a new nebulae and putting it onto the board. So I'm going to go ahead and gather a 3, and we're going to take it down, and we'll put it over here. We'll put it over, over here looks like a good spot for me. Then after that, so those are these 2 things over here. Then on this side, I'm going to gather 2 life. Now, life does have to be placed adjacent to other life, so you do have to spread it slowly around the galaxy. There are ways to avoid that, but for right now, we'll start off placing it there. Then over here, I'm going to gather 1 energy card because there's 1 marble. I'll grab a red, and then we'll place it from the top of the deck. Although you replace it at the end, you do not replace it as you're gathering. And then over here, I'll look over here and move 3 movements because there's 3 full marbles. I'll move my token 1, 2, 3 up that track. We're trying to get over here. We'll explain why shortly. Lastly, over here, if we had any marbles, we would earn movement. Movement can be used to move your stars or your life around the galaxy with various movement rules. That's going to be the resources you're gathering. Now, the other things you could have gathered had you placed your marble in a different spot is over here, you would have gotten 3 hydrogen stars. Over here, you would have gotten 1 oxygen star, as well as you would earn 2 of these. These let you flip temporary life into permanent life. We'll talk more about that later, but that would be very helpful to do so. And then lastly over here, you get 2 helium stars, as well as 1 universal, which means you can flip one of these to its other side, where it becomes a universal star, fulfilling all requirements, only counting as 1 star, but you can't move it with the movement, which gives you a little bit of a downside. So you're earning all these resources effectively. You're earning stars that will go into the galaxy, you're placing new nebulae out, you're placing life out, you're flipping life into permanent life, you're gathering movement, you're getting all these little benefits. Why are you doing all of this? It's also worth noting, by the way, these resources over here reset to 0 at the end of your turn, so it's very much a use it or lose it kind of thing. Now, when you're done gathering resources, which that was all just gathering resources, again, your turn is structured into move the marbles around the little thingy over here, the rondel, then gather resources. Now you can take any number of actions as long as you can afford to do so. So, what are the actions you can take? First of all, you've already put stars into the board based on gathering them over here. You can flip a star to its permanent side, to its universal side, which we talked about there. You can flip life to its permanent side, and you can move things around the board. Additional actions that you have access to, you can complete a galaxy if it's surrounded by the right stars. So if we had 2 helium, let's go ahead and gather these over here. If we had 2 helium and 2 hydrogen over here, so let's put these like that, and then like that, and then like that. If this was the current setup over here, I can say, look, we have 2 helium from this universal crystal and the helium. We have 2 hydrogen. We're going to flip this and we're going to get 3 points. We're going to move up 1, 2, 3 over here. And then additionally, all galaxies, all nebulae, when you complete them, you have to remove one of the stars around the nebulae. So I'll remove this, returning to the box. I got my 3 points. That's one of the main things you're trying to do in the game in order to score points. Another thing you can do is if at any point your marker reaches 6. So if it's ever at 6, you're going to take a new marker from the tab, from the little tray over here, putting it out on the board. That is one of 2 endgame triggers. If you run out of those, and there are a variable number depending on the number of players, that would trigger the game end. There's another way it will trigger game end. We'll come back to that shortly. But if you ever have a marker at 6, you could at any point go ahead and move it to the rightmost available spot over here, gaining those points, which will slowly get higher and higher, but also getting a star of your choice that you can put anywhere in the galaxy to fulfill other requirements. So as you can see over here, gather more stars, placing them out based on having these markers here. Again, they can stack up here and you can keep moving there. If you ever get above 6, you can still get the star, but not more points over there. I should say above 5, I should say. Although if you get to 5, you're doing a good enough job right there. That's going to be another thing you can do. The other things you can do are going to come down to your cards, and these cards over here, which we haven't talked about. You're going to gather cards from this area over here, and there's 3 things you can do with those cards. The first thing you can do is you can discard 2 cards, and then 3, and then 3, and then 4, meaning an escalating number of cards. You can discard them in order to take various abilities. So for example, let's pretend I had 2 of these. I could cash these into the bank, into the discard pile, and then take the top 3 of the associated color, so that's going to be the light stack over here, look at them, and I can put one of them into play as an ongoing ability. For example, I'll take Speed of Light, which this is a fun one. I would put it down to the side over there. I'm just going to put it over here. Well, you know what? Let's move this out of the way. I'm going to put it down over here, and it goes there. I now have that ability. The second thing you can do with cards is very often these abilities have costs in the effect of cards. They're going to give you different cards you have to pay. Sometimes it's the same color, sometimes it's a specific color, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But you can give up cards, discard them to gain the ability of that card. So you can do that as often as you can afford to pay it, which means as often as you have these cards to discard. I should also note, when you get one of these for the first time, you're going to take that marker and put it onto the associated area, in this case here, and now whenever I collect, I'm going to get an extra card by default. Even if there's nothing in that little area, I would still get that extra free card. So building up your abilities is not just giving you abilities, it's also giving you more income on a general basis as you go through the income collection phase. That's going to be the second thing you can do with cards. The third thing you can do with cards is you can pay 5 cards at any point to go ahead and get 6 points. So you can pay 5 cards to get 6 points, and that will give you another source of earning extra points. Which brings us to our last source of points over here, or one of the last we'll talk about right now, is going to be this area here. Once all players have taken a turn, you're going to go ahead and advance this and move this down over here, and that's going to give you goals that are going to score when they hit the end of the track. So you can slowly see different things you're working towards, such as the most proto-life on the board, or having the total size of completed nebulas in Psi. Psi is going to be this area here, so maybe I want to start building out this area and working to complete those, because once this goes to the end, you'll be scoring that, giving 6 points to whoever accomplished it the best, and 3 points to whoever did second best, all ties being friendly. And then lastly, the last thing to really cover, I think mainly last thing, but we'll see what else there is going to be at the end of your turn, you get to move this to one of these 2 areas. You can either move it down to gather a new nebulae, or you can move it up to flip one of your proto-life into permanent life. Which brings us to the actual last thing. The actual last thing is these worms, which is once a completed nebulae is completely surrounded by life, you can go ahead and put a worm on it, which will have a variable number of points that you get to see. The others don't. The first ones that you get in the game are worth more points. Then once those first 2 are gone, you'll be able to get more, but they're worth a little bit fewer points. And then any temporary, any purple life will get removed from the board, and any green life will stay. So you're trying to get a nice balance of getting that life into play to get those worms into play, but trying to get green life so you can use it for multiple nebulae, but the purple life is easier to get, and you want to play that balance as well. That's the puzzle you're playing in Crafting the Cosmos. Again, your basic structure of the game, which brings us to the last thing, is the other way that endgame is triggered, is there's going to be 6 cards in the stack, and once the last card is scored, that will trigger endgame if you haven't run out of these beforehand. So, to give a very quick recap, in Crafting the Cosmos, you are trying to build out your nebulae. You're trying to complete your nebulae with various stars, but you're also trying to work towards a lot of other ways of getting points, such as those worms that will go onto those stars, as well as the goals that will score each round. There's going to be a bunch of other ways you're gathering points. You're going to do that by taking a turn of moving your marbles around this little tableau over here, gathering resources, then taking actions while the next player starts in their turn. Once a round is complete, this moves down, rinse and repeat until game end is triggered, and see who has the most points. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into my thoughts and opinions, my review, what I like, don't like, can see others not liking about Crafting the Cosmos. And let's, as usual, start with what I like. In general, there's a good number of different things going on in this game and different ways to focus. And you can really try to lean into different areas. You can really try to get these all the way up here, because if you can get that 21 point over there, that is a nice chunk of points that may well win you the game just by having done all of these right here. So getting this up on a regular basis is a great way of getting some star flexibility as well as getting chunks of points. But you also want to focus on getting your abilities out. You also want to focus on completing your nebulae, getting those worms. Everything in this game is going to give you points, and it drives you in different directions as you try to figure out which is the way you want to work towards. And sometimes it's going to be based on your personal preference. Sometimes it's going to be based on this little rondelle and what's giving you the most resources. Sometimes it's going to be based on the abilities you draw and what feeds into this. If this was my very first ability, this one lets me build up stacks of cards, cash them in for 6 points, but also putting a star out. If that's my first ability I get in the game, I'm going to play a very different game just around that one ability. I may not bother getting any other abilities. I do like abilities, but maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just drive around that star completion and those extra chunk of 6 points that I consistently get as I play through the game. And so building up your own developed asymmetry to some extent through the abilities, but also just playing the game and working your way in different directions is going to be a big source of the game. Speaking of the rondelle is a fun little puzzle. It's a puzzle of trying to figure out what you can get that helps you the most, because everything helps you. There's an instinct to get more, but sometimes a good source of movement can be enough to win you the game. Moving your stars around the galaxy consistently can lead you to cash in again and again on things you already worked towards building. Yes, when you complete a nebula, you have to get rid of a star, but you can mitigate how bad that is by getting a chunk of hydrogen stars out on the board and then trying to move the rest of them around in order to go ahead and give you that point scoring on a repeated basis. Leaning into all those abilities is a big part of the game. You're going to have 4 different stacks of abilities, giving you slight different twists of the theme they add to it, and the combination of your up to 4 abilities that you'll have will give you a lot of different uniqueness, to the way you're going to play the game relative to the other players. And there's lots of resources to juggle around. You're frequently getting, again, there's the left side of the rondelle and the right side of the rondelle. Both of those are puzzles that give you a lot of ways to try to figure out which resources are going to help you the most, and trying to figure out where to put those stars so that they nicely work with all the planets, because this is a little bit trying to figure out, well, if I have this star here, and this star here, and this star here, well, that's the star I want there, this is the star I want here, flipping this to its universal side will fulfill things, but then I can't move it. How do I want to balance that? And so the combination of lots of ways to score points, lots of ways to drive towards those points, just gives you a overall satisfying puzzle of getting more while doing more and trying to fulfill that better than the other players before you get to the end of the game. As far as things I don't like in the game, there's going to be 3 things, 2 of which are more important to me than the other. The third thing is that ultimately, the abstract nature of the game, it makes it educational but slightly harder to learn. I do find that there's a lot of, meaning when you're going through the rulebook, there's a lot of terms that are thrown around different things, even just the nature of the prototype life, the nebulae, the stars. All of these things make the game more educational, but possibly a bit more abstract in a way that makes it a little less intuitive than I like. That's a very minor complaint. It's not a big deal. The 2 bigger issues for me are the fact that, first of all, I do find that this is very much a heads down game. I'm doing my own little thing. I don't care at all about your turn, and the game does do a decent job at speeding it up a little bit by having other players start their turn as you're leaning into your actions, but I do find this is a little slower than I would like, especially at higher player counts. At 4 players, I simply would not play this. 3 is tolerable, and I think 2 is actually the best. I find that the level of interaction with the other players is just not really present, and other players adds more downtime. So this is very much a heads down game where I only care what I'm doing, and you happen to exist, but I don't care or know what you're doing. It has minimal interaction on my actual gameplay, past the fact that, of course, you're going to be moving marbles in this shared little rondelle. And then separately from that, and this is a complaint that might sound like a small one, but it has impacted my enjoyment of the game, I do find the components very, very fiddly. Specifically, life more so than the rest, but honestly, all of it's not the best over here. These planets have a nice divot to push them out, but nothing that keeps them in place. These over here I frequently find get knocked over, especially when you're trying to work with life. These life tokens, as you gather a life token and you're trying to place it on the board between stars, you kind of have to slide it in there. Even this is like me not even, that's genuine right there. You're trying to slide those in, which for one is not the worst, but when you earn 2 or 3 life and you're trying to place them out, it can be really annoying to place them out and then also to even flip them to their other side. Like, this is, again, it might seem like I'm trying to be dramatic for the sake of this. I'm really not. This is, when you actually play it, those pieces are more fiddly than I would like, and then you also have to remove them when you go ahead and get those worms. And I do find that there's a lot of toy factor to the visual aesthetics of the game, but the actual execution of it, I found that the pieces were fiddly enough that it was an actual irritation as I was playing through the game. It gets in the way of the experience. As far as what I can see others not liking, there's very much luck driven as far as the goals go. Meaning these goals over here, there's a whole stack of them, which is nice. I love variety in that sense. So having a whole stack of different goals, of which you only use 6 each game, that part's great. The problem is you don't see the goals when you start. You see a goal one at a time, each turn revealing another one. And yes, you all have to build towards the ones that you see. But I do find it is very, very common in the game for some of the goals to reward what some players have already been naturally doing and other players not so much. If you happen to be building this section of your galaxy and I've been building mine and a goal comes out that rewards me for building mine, I'm just going to get rewarded with that. And sure, you can evenly balance your growth to accommodate for that, but ultimately someone who leans into just one happenstance will get rewarded, and there's enough of these goals that have a variable happenstance, somebody is going to get rewarded for doing the thing that you are already doing in the game. It's a very small complaint, that's not something I care about because I'm more in it for the experience I'm having and less about who wins, but if you care about that balance, I do think it might be a factor. As far as final thoughts on Crafting the Cosmos, I really wanted to like this game. I had a chance to see this game for the first time at PAX Unplugged. I was very compelled by the experience. But after diving into it a few times, I found that I liked the game to a certain extent, but the two things that hold it back for me definitely do hold it back. The fact that the downtime is not nothing. Again, you can mitigate it a little bit by running into each other's turns and having that, although I do find that lends itself to a little bit of chaos as to what's going on. A small amount, manageable, but it does speed up the game at the cost of a clear delineation between turns. But overall, I find that the downtime versus me caring about what you're doing just makes this a game that I'd prefer to play at 2 players in general, and higher player counts just makes the experience worse. That combined with the fiddliness of the game means that overall, I like a lot of things that Crafting the Cosmos is doing, but it is held back in some ways for me. For me, this is coming in at a 3 out of 5, and to be very clear, it would have been a 3.5 except for the component fiddliness. I do like the game overall, the component fiddliness moves it a step down for me, and unfortunately I'm coming in at a 3 out of 5. Not bad, not by any means, but a good enough game marred by component fiddliness to a small degree. As far as other game recommendations, I definitely recommend checking out Calico. If you're looking for a game that has you managing different multiple requirements at the same time, Calico very much has this puzzle in a way that I thoroughly enjoyed. And then separately, if you're looking for games about building out ecosystems, a very different game, but one if you like that kind of system of building things out, but with a game that I thought was just an overall better experience, check out Forest Shuffle for an excellent ecosystem building game. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.